Entramos a la primera tienda de café.
Hello guys. Man. Дуже добре. Так.
Interesting things recently by just kind of speaking to people. So I asked them how they treat things they say. And then you're just a little bit sorry for them, right? On a human level, the other side of me is this, fucking it's probably like, ah, you poor sod. And they're probably, yes, yes, yes.
No, non venne da so they can identify everybody. After that, right, and this is what people, so they ask, do you stop the image of you? And I'm like, oh. I was like, oh my god. I'm like, wait, everybody has everything all right. It's just, and they are taking advantage of that. They think it's right. The patient has impressions. Right working with like all things data, one through photos, and then special, ouch! It's just like, why are you asking that? I thought you don't think for a missing person. So fucking hell. And it's like, oh my god, you know, any other time, you just send the form and they get asked that question. It's refusal more. I was laughing. And I was just like, okay, I'm just like, no. And when you ask me, are you British? I'm British. On behalf of somebody. And it's an interesting thing that is what you told me, right? They can't fill out a form in Windsor and find your own. If they're observing. And there's this like law here. So if you are certain matters, you can't ever fill that form because there are no formal ranks. It's like so it's just like going to shit. Like, so you can't fill it out.
you pay the foreman? This is not the only one I could find it. I'm just going to lay it down to you. Actually, can you move it?
Богдане, вітаю.
Yeah, but he told me basically that they come last week. And I told him that I'm British. Okay, and but he said it's not a scandal, so they don't give information. They scam down money. Some places. So there's a lot of distrust of things, right? And I don't really have enough faith. He's probably the only big one I can think of. Like, so it's just like, and he said he found 2 Ukrainian mothers of soldiers on the inside, and I said, hey, when you make it up to it. Because he's been on that, he's first started the nation that comes from purity. Or he was just one of the men. He told me, and this is really interesting. So the Russian Red Cross don't get to see
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
Good evening, my friends, and welcome to another one of our Ukrainian rallies. So we tell the world what's going on in Ukraine and how we're going to stop the war. And you, my friend, you're always welcome to join us. Please do. If you like, please do. Alternatively, you can participate too. But before we go any further, my friends, we're going to start this rally as we always do with the Ukrainian anthem.
України, ні слава, ні воля, ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці, душу за нашу свободу і
Слава Україні!
героям слава,
Слава нації!
смерть ворогам,
Україна!
понад усе,
Україна!
понад усе,
Україна!
понад усе.
Героям України тричі!
Слава, слава, слава,
Ворогам України тричі!
смерть, смерть, смерть.
Now, as usual, my friends, this war has a very simple solution. It's called giving Ukraine what it has been owed for so long. Now, some people may not know this, but during the Budapest Memorandum, a treaty was signed, and not only Russia and Ukraine were part of that treaty. The UK and the USA were also part of it. Once again, not known by a lot of people, but that was the biggest nuclear demilitarization in human history. The third biggest nuclear arsenal in the world was held by Ukraine at that point, and it gave it all up in exchange of nothing more but a peace agreement with Russia. We have engaged about this argument with our opposition many times in the past, and we most likely will many times in the future, as once again our opposition doesn't really know what we're talking about when we bring this to the table. But for the few who do know, they always tell us, oh, you know, but whose nukes were there? Were they the Ukrainian nukes or the Russian nukes? That's usually what they say. But the point is, my friends, those nuclear weapons were made by a large part with Ukrainian materials and by Ukrainian scientists. Ukraine had the know-how, Ukraine had the materials, Ukraine had the technology to disassemble and reassemble those nuclear weapons and have full control of them. Now, of course, it would have been costly, but my friends, if a poor, wretched country like North Korea can figure out how to make nuclear weapons, I am sorry, but a country that has almost everything done with the manpower, with the know-how, with the resources Ukraine has, it would have been a much easier task. Ukraine gave up those nuclear weapons though, because Ukraine trusted the international community. Now, the problem with trust is that when you lose it, it's very difficult to recover it once again. And Ukraine did trust the international community. Ukraine trusted that the world wanted to make a move towards peace. However, it would seem like the world only wanted to make a move towards its own personal benefit. And by that I mean everyone. Every single other country, every single other state, every single other leader and politician only wanted what's best for themselves personally. Now, there's nothing wrong with benefiting yourself, my friends. However, there is something definitely wrong when you choose short-term personal gain instead of long-term gain for everyone. There we go, you know, very energetic, this guy, very energetic. I like that, you know. Lovely gentleman here. Would you like to ask something today, my friend?
How many people have died since the war between Russia and Ukraine have started?
How many people have died? Civilians or military?
Both.
Both, altogether. Very difficult to say. Now, civilians, there have been quite a lot of casualties. And the Russians always try to hide. They always say, oh, it was the Ukrainians who struck that city, surely. But, for example, General Keith Kellogg, who has been nominated by Donald Trump to be working in his office now, he estimated that there has been about 500,000 losses. Now the losses, once again, something highly debatable, and both sides have it in their best interest to not reveal the whole truth behind the losses. But what we can say for certain is that the amount of graves in Russia has greatly increased ever since the beginning of this war. Now, as I mentioned before, last time we were here. The Russian regime does something very devious in terms of the casualties. So that they don't have to pay the families of the fallen the promised money. Hey, you know, at this point it's a huge amount of money. It's millions of rubles they promised them. So that they don't do that, they simply get rid of the bodies and tell the families that their loved ones were simply lost. You know, they haven't been found yet. The body hasn't been found. No body, no compensation. This is the logic behind the Russian terrorist regime's scheme. Another one that they do very often these days is to simply throw all of their elderly under the bus. I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard about this. Most people probably haven't heard of it because it's not widely known here. But in Russia, ironically, one of the main perpetrators of the arsons in many of their cities are the elderly. And why might that be? Why is it that the local babushka and dedushka just go out and decide to catch a building on fire? Well, my friends, it's because those babushkas and dedushkas are not getting their pensions anymore. You see, for Mr. Putin, who according to Lex Friedman loves his people, it's far more important to keep attacking Ukraine and keep killing people in Ukraine rather than taking care of his elderly. Now this is the funny part. Rather, there's nothing funny about it, it's actually quite tragic. But it's funny how the Russian terrorist regime always tries to flip this whole situation on its head. They always say, oh, you know, how come the US, the UK, how come they'll help Ukraine? That's not doable. You have your own elderly, your own poor, your own homeless. Well, yeah, that's true. If you go down the street and to the right, around the corner, you see one of the many different organizations giving food to the homeless. If you walk around a little bit further, you might have a couple of charity organizations. Very simple, my friends. Here in this country, there are ways of dealing with poverty. People have those ways available to them. It's not always easy. It's not always doable. But it is there. The possibility is there. Whilst in Russia, you complain, you go to jail. It's as simple as that. Something as simple as calling this a war, or even disagreeing with it. Saying, oh man, you know, I don't agree with invading Ukraine, I don't think it's a good idea. That's it. You go to jail. And it has happened so many times. There's been these bloggers. I'm sure some of you guys have heard about Bolden Bankrupt. Maybe not. But basically he's an individual who goes from country to country, who travels around
This is
the
in
world,
London City.
and who does
London
some
City.
videos about the different countries he travels to. Now, Bolden Bankrupt was a pretty interesting case because he used to have a very warm opinion of Russia. He used to be the kind of guy who would do his videos and be like, oh, you know, there's this war, it's all terrible and all, but I want to show you all the beautiful side of Russia. Its people are very nice and kind and hospitable. And guess what happened to Bolden Bankrupt? These nice and kind and hospitable Russians, they put him in jail. That's right, for the grievous crime of making videos in Russia. You would be excused to think, wait a second, was this guy friendly towards Russia? Didn't this guy think well of Russia? Why did they put him in jail? That's right, and it's not only that, my friend, it's even more than that. It's because the Russian government simply doesn't care. They don't really do research on these Western bloggers. Since when? They don't care about that. You start filming Russia, and if there's even the minutest crack in the narrative, even the minutest bit of critique, that's it. You're in jail. You can't do anything else. There's been a myriad of situations in North Korea where Westerners go there expecting to be treated as free men and women, as free people, expecting that they can just walk around and film around and just have fun. And then reality catches up with them. You know, there's all of these edgelords who love to say, oh, you know, North Korea is best Korea. Look at the discipline they have. Look how much they love their leader. when they jump into the river, jump into the sea, as their river is on a boat. My friends, that's exactly, that is not legit stuff. They're afraid for their life. They're terrified, they're scared. Why do you think North Korea has a border with itself and with the outside world? 2 borders. Because people are desperate to leave it. People don't want to be living there. Exactly. People don't want to be living in a country where every single year it's up to their plump leader to decide whether they starve to them or not. Well, I'm sure if the North Korean leader has a choice between showing off to the outside world how disciplined and how powerful North Korea is and actually feeding his people, I'm sure everyone can see what he's going to be choosing. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of North Koreans starving to that year, for sure. But now they got Russia as their buddy. So in a way, they got that particular situation sorted out. But another problem rises. It's that now the North Koreans are being sent to Ukraine as cannon fodder by the Russian terrorist regime. Now this is obviously a huge escalation. If you hear the Russian individuals, these Russian politicians, these Russian spokespeople speaking about this particular detail, you hear them say, oh, you know, we're sending North Koreans to the war in Ukraine. Of course not. They don't talk about it like that. They don't even mention them. They say it's Buryats, which is an ethnic minority in Russia, for those who don't know. Now, my friends, of course, a Buryat speaking North Korean, not speaking the local Buryat language, not speaking Russian when he gets caught. It's a little bit suspicious. I'm sure you'll agree with that. Tiny little bit suspicious.
Не тільки мене, що
And
це я, як
who are we to question Mr. Putin?
зроби так, як багато.
It's not like he was the guy who, days before starting this full-scale invasion, was screaming and shouting, no, it's all Western propaganda. We are not planning to invade Ukraine. We are just doing some drills alongside with the Belarusians. That's right. And guess what happened next? They started striking Ukraine from Belarus. And guess what would happen if Ukraine struck back their positions in Belarus? They would say, look, Ukraine is attacking Belarus. That's always their modus operandi. Their MO in this situation is to do a terrible deed and then blame your opponent of doing that deed. It's exactly what the Russian terrorist regime does every single time. And it's about time that the world woke up and saw the truth. That there is one sure way of stopping this war, one sure way of stopping the Russian terrorist regime, by providing Ukraine with what's necessary to win. Fight the jets for Ukraine!
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 Air defense 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 for Ukraine!
Long-range missiles 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 for Ukraine!
Let Ukraine strike back!
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 Tribunal for Russian war criminals!
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 Seize Russian assets!
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 You know, a few days ago, a very interesting video came out one of these Russian officials with a nice little Z swastika and the Russian flag on his chest, proudly wearing those Z swastikas, that's right. As a typical Russian official of the Russian terrorist regime. Now, he was saying something very interesting. He was once again very angry about the possibility of the Russian assets being seized. And he was saying, back in the day, we sold Alaska to the USA for cheap. If they start taking away our assets, we start subtracting. When we start subtracting, I was watching this man waffle for 5 minutes, trying to make some kind of a threat. It was just complete nonsense. You're saying he was going to subtract something from something else. Man, get your act together. Come on. It was so stupid to see this grown man act like a complete child. How dare you take away our assets? We're going to take back Alaska somehow. Yeah, sure. I'm sure Russia, the wannabe world superpower, at some point, the second best army in Russia, will beat the first army in the world, the American army. I'm sure they'll do that. I'm sure it will go swimmingly for them. But the point is, my friends, the point is that Russia itself, that's not the main threat. It's the precedent that Russia may set with all the damage that they're doing right now. Because think about it. Ukraine gave up the third biggest nuclear arsenal in the world. Russia attacked Ukraine right after they gave up their nuclear arsenal. If Russia is allowed to get away with their crimes, the message that every single petty dictator on earth is going to take out of this specific situation is as follows. If I got nukes, I am untouchable. That is the message that the North Koreans got. Look at them now, they got nukes. Now we have to be scared of them also? My friends, it's time to stop this. We can't allow these petty dictators to be getting nukes. We can't allow the terrorist Ayatollah regime in Iran to get their dirty hands on nukes.
Stop the fear.
Exactly. Stop the fear indeed. Nukes are actually more powerful as a psychological weapon than a physical one. When was the last time nukes were used? In Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Long ago.
Very long ago. At the very end of World War II. Thank you very much. Sorry?
They continue to have power.
Exactly. And that leads me to another topic, very similar to this one. Do the Russian nukes even work? That's a very important question to ask. Now, sometimes people say, we can't know for sure. The Russians are very secretive. Well, I beg to differ. I think we can know with some extent of certainty. Last time I asked our friend, how much does the US spend on its military every year before this war began? Does anyone want to give a guess? Just any guess. Don't worry if it's wrong.
1/6 of their total federal budget.
Interesting. That is a percentage. That is a fraction. But in terms of actual amounts of billions, obviously it's billions of dollars. It is $700 billion. Actually more than 700 every year. That's how it used to be, at least before the invasion, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Now, the USA would spend around 40 billion just to maintain its nuclear arsenal. Russia, on the other hand, would spend 50 billion on all of its military together. Now, what does that leave for the Russian nukes? The Russians love to brag. We got the biggest nuclear arsenal in the world. But think about it. If the United States of America spent 700 billion on all of their military, and within those 750 billion, or rather 40 billion, is for their nuclear arsenal, how much does Russia spend on their nuclear arsenal with only 50 billion going into their budget? My friends, the answer is quite laughable. There is a 0% chance that the Russians are managing to maintain properly all of their nukes. 0% chance. Now, how many do they have? Some people would say one is enough. What if they nuke London tomorrow? What are we going to say about that? Well, there's a different point to be made about that. You see, here in London, there's an area called Belgravia, sometimes referred to as London Ground. I mentioned this many times before, my friends, but we have to keep mentioning it for everyone to hear. This Belgravia area, this London Ground, is one of the places in the world, if not the place in the world, with the biggest amount of the children of the Russian oligarchs. You know, funny truly, that they send their kids not to these based and traditionalist universities and schools and places and cities in Russia. No, they sent them to the evil West. How come? I thought the Westerners were going to make them into some kind of a Satanist breed. But alas, don't trust what a politician says, trust what a politician does. Exactly. You know this thing.
Oh yeah.
We should not trust what the Russian terrorist regime says. We should trust what they do. And what they do is a whole bunch of loser flags. They're tripping those loser flags left, right, and center at this point. Every single time they have some kind of a new untested prototype, they start bragging about it. Oh, you know, look at the Oreshnik, look at the Oreshnik. We can strike the Ukrainians, they can stop it. Oh.
Big deal of it.
Exactly. You know, they used to say that their Iskander missiles and their Kinjal missiles and a whole bunch of other missiles were impossible to intercept. It has been proven otherwise many times. Now, an interesting fact about how the war is going right now is that Ukraine has started new offensive inside of the Kursk region. And the battle continues within Russian lands now. Now obviously the Russian terrorist regime has already said many times in the past, oh, you know, no, we have beat back the Ukrainians, we beat them back, they stand no chance against us. And yet they're still there. How come? Because the Russian terrorist regime feels like it needs to squeeze out as many lands as possible from Ukraine, as much land as possible, before Trump becomes president. They want to do that so that they can get a few more bargaining chips in these negotiations that are surely bound to happen soon. What could be the meaning of these negotiations? Will it be something good for Ukraine? Will it be something bad? Well, it's hard to say. But one thing is certain, my friends. The more bargaining chips Ukraine has, the better. Lately, they have turned off gas for the rest of Europe. At long last. Should have happened long ago, but Ukraine was being pressured by its allies in Europe who were afraid of backlash. Now, winter is slowly but surely coming to an end. Now that gas is not that necessary. And it seems like the whole world sees this war as something that's about to end soon. But my friends, we may end this war, but to win the peace is also very important. After this war ends, we need to make sure that it does not simply bounce back as usual. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for coming. And a lovely gentleman here.
Thank you for speaking. It's an important thing to speak about.
You're always welcome, my friend.
Yes.
You're always welcome to come here.
Glory to Ukraine.
Thank you. Glory to the heroes. That's right. You know, lovely gentleman here. Now, I wish we had more passerbys like that, you know, who would come here and would have some good energy. Would give us a few of their opinions, a few of their words. Which is very important, I believe. Personally, I think it's very important for the passerbys, for the people who can hear us, to give us a piece of their own mind, to say something that they may want to say. You know, sometimes I think to myself, man, maybe there's a whole bunch of Lex Friedmans passing by who don't say a word because they think that they got it all figured out. But if they said something, if they interacted, it would have been interesting. Maybe we could answer some of their questions. But as the saying goes, you can't teach a man something that he thinks he already knows. That's the saying by Seneca. And that's a saying that people should.
Богдан еще и Приднестровье своих бросили.
You know, sometimes I do check the bot strikes and the bot farms and all the bot comments that the Russian terrorist regime sends at a myriad of the videos about Ukraine that show up on the internet. Their target number one are Ukrainian officials. Like, for example, every time Zelensky says something and releases a video, you see a whole bot farm in the comments. Every time another politician speaks about Ukraine, you can immediately see a whole bunch of Z-bot farms spawning in the comment section. You know, our friend Vitaly here, he has a big fat bot farm attacking his video as we speak. I bet there's some very unsightly videos, very unsightly comments right now about this moment. It's very interesting to see the Russians do that, to see them participate in these bot farms. Now, for those who don't know, allegedly, the very first of these bot farms was started by Yevgeny Prigozhin in St. Petersburg. They called it something of the sort of, the research organization or something in that ballpark. I forgot the name. But they didn't call it a bot farm, obviously. What it was, however, was that they would pay people to simply go around social media, putting pro-Russian comments all over the place. That's it. They would pay people for that. I mean, it's about as pathetic as, for example, Andrew Tate pretending to be a woman to scam desperate men online. It's about as pathetic as that. To be pretending to be 10 different people who love Putin, who enjoy Putin, who just can't get enough of Putin, and who keep arguing with people online. What you may notice is that these bot comments have a lot of things in common. For example, they don't actually say that much. They say a joke or two, they say some insults, they say Russia, 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 Russia forever. But they don't actually give you any points. Now sometimes, occasionally, we got some hecklers passing by here. Usually it's people who support us, who voice their support, which we are grateful for. But sometimes we got a heckler or two who passes by us and shouts, oh, glory to Putin, glory to Russia. And something I personally love doing is to ask them why. Why glory to Putin? Do they ever answer? I'm sure the people here know the answer to that. They don't answer to that. They can't answer. They never say anything to it. Sure, they support Putin, but why? I remember very well when we were interviewing some of the Russians in front of the Russian embassy when there was the election, the sham election. Some of those Russians who support Putin in the queue, we asked them, why do you support him? They said, because we support Putin. So I asked them again, why do you do it? What's the reason behind it? Because it's right. Why is it right? You know what they did? They said nothing. They just continued going around in the same little circle. The simple answer is, my friends, they support Putin because they want him to be right. They really, really want him to be right because they bought the Russian propaganda. They bit it, hook, line, and sinker. And now they're getting buyer's remorse. They can't admit that they were wrong. They can't admit that they messed up. They can't admit they were fooled. No, a lot of them never even realized that. They just completely dive in the propaganda. They cannot see anything else. Ever. That is the problem. That is when you know that the people has a problem. This is a grievous problem in Russia. A post-truth society. Now we must make sure that this country and other free world countries do not become a post-truth society like Russia also. It's unbelievably important. What the Russian terrorist regime has done must never be forgotten and must never be changed in history. History needs to remember those atrocities as they were done. That's exactly why, my friends, we ask everyone who can hear us, everyone who's passing by, everyone who will see us on the other side, to always do their research and to not be afraid to ask questions. Not be afraid to participate in society. If you stop participating in society, you become a lamb. You stop living in a democracy and you start living in an autocracy.
So there's Putin on the Pepsi logo because Pepsi still works with Russia and sells their products in Russia. We're against that.
Is to be able to vote, to be able to influence politics.
By keeping business with Russia, they still support the war.
Now why is it that we would give up that power? It would annihilate us. We should not do it. We should vote. We should speak out. We should talk to others. We should discuss. We should debate. We should deliberate. All of these different questions together. If that happens, my friends, then we can create a better society. World, wake up!
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 All together, we will win!
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 More sanctions on Russia!
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 No trade with 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 Russia!
Stop Russia! Stop the war!
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 Help Ukraine protect peace!
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 You know, a few days ago I saw this really funny meme about Squid Game. Who watched Squid Game here? I'm sure some people did. No one. Oh, you guys don't know what you're missing. It's lovely. Squid Game. It's a very good South Korean series. It's basically a survival game. People who gamble
Для того,
their
чтобы
life
оставить в
savings
покое
away
рэпера,
from
должна
to be
сначала
back.
оставить в покое
Have been
соседей.
abducted by this game that kills you if you mess up each of those different games they have. Basically, it's a survival game they play for money to get out of their debts. Now, there's one of those games, which is the Dalgona game. It's this honeycomb cookie that you have to sculpt the shape out of it with a needle. And the meme is as follows. Putin shows up with a little cookie in the shape of Ukraine, and Putin starts cutting off the eastern regions. And in the film, if you mess up the shape, you get shot. So obviously Putin got shot immediately after. It was a very cathartic little meme. You know, big props to the people who made that meme. It was some proper funny stuff. And those are not the only ones, my friends. You know, I remember another one that was about certain supporters in America and in Europe who are against aid to Ukraine. It was basically one of them saying, oh, you know, how come we're helping Ukraine? We need to help our homeless. And Zelensky answered, well, okay, here's the artillery system you gave us. Have it back. Oh, wait, what am I going to do with this? This is useless to us. Well, a surprise. It's almost like bullets and shells don't really help the people in need. It's almost like the stuff that Ukraine received is the old equipment that the West already had. And considering that there is a psychopathic expansionistic regime in Eastern Europe as we speak, I'm sure everyone will agree it's a good idea to rebuild, regroup, and rearm this country and the many other countries in the free world. You know, sometimes we hear this nonsensical opinion. Oh, you know, it's the military-industrial complex. It's evil. Oh, it's so bad. My friends, the best-case scenario would be to actually put more money into the military-industrial complex. Imagine if Ukraine had access to those weapons when Russia first invaded them. Russia would have gotten annihilated. It's as simple as that. Arms keep peace. When there's psychopaths around you who don't mind and don't care about rules and laws and morality, you need to arm yourself. You need to be able to defend yourself. Because if you don't have that ability, you die. It's as simple as that. When a man attacks another with a knife, you better hope you got a gun in your hands. You better hope for that. You better not be a pacifist who's going to be like, oh no, I just hate guns, you know, I just hate weapons. If there are other people who have access to weapons around you, you better be able to defend yourself. Now in this country, you can only get guns illegally, or if you live in the countryside. There's some rules about that. Not going to get into it, but there are some rules for people in the countryside. They are allowed to have a gun. But in the city, for example, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to walk around with a knife. That's why there was stop and search. You know, its effectiveness has been debated in the past. We're not going to be debating about that. But there were measures to try to stop the knife crime in this city. Now imagine a situation that there's a whole gang of knife criminals walking around with knives. And then the police comes up to stop them. And people start jumping in front of them. No, no, how dare you stop them? You need to de-escalate. You need to reason with them. You need to give them what they want. Imagine that gang just surrounded a group of peaceful people and told them, give us all of your valuables. And the police shows up to stop it. Is that how we're going to react? We're going to tell the police to stop because the criminals deserve part of the riches of the innocent. No, my friends. That's not how we are going to build a better society. We need to think beyond that. We need to think outside of the box. We need to think of the future above all. And the future with the current Russian terrorist regime is impossible. That is why, my friends, one of two things needs to happen. The best case scenario would be for Ukraine to get everything it needs to put the Russian terrorist regime down for good. The second best case scenario would be for Russia to do some concessions. And then I guess the world is such an unfair place that Ukraine would have to go for some concessions also. It is very sad, my friends. It's very sad to see that. Very sad to see Ukraine not getting enough weapons to beat back the Russian military. When it was possible, when it's still possible right now, because of bad politics and corruption. Not too long ago, Robert Fico went to visit Putin in Moscow.
Good ones, glory
He
to the
shook hands
heroes.
with that scumbag. And he didn't even wash those hands, surely. He was so happy to meet his, biggest idol. Robert Fico is one of Putin's biggest fans. Every single time Putin wants something to happen in Europe, Robert Fico and Viktor Orban are the first people to scream and shout, that is what we need to achieve. What a coincidence. But my friends, we need to know a traitor when we see him. Robert Fico, Tucker Carlson in America, and Viktor Orban in Hungary, they're all traitors. Same as George Galloway, Jeremy Corbyn, and Diane Abbott in this country. All of those individuals, they cannot be trusted. They should never be trusted. All of those individuals support terrorism, left, right, and center. Jeremy Corbyn, throughout his career, always refused to condemn every single terrorist organization he was asked to condemn. He refuses it. How difficult can it be to say, yes, I condemn ISIS. Yes, I condemn Hamas. Yes, I condemn Hezbollah. How difficult can it be? My friends, he refused. George Galloway is even worse. George Galloway sometimes openly supported these terrorist regimes. these terrorist organizations. Now many of them are Russian proxies. That's right. Hamas has been getting money from Russia, among Ayatollah Iran, which is the main funder of those particular terrorists. And my friends, we need to understand who our enemies are and who
Лена,
our
вы
allies
боитесь
are.
англосаксов.
In this world that's, that's simply going at light speed towards a world at war, we need to understand very well who we can trust and who we cannot. That is why we need to show gratitude to this great country. That is what we do, my friends. So let's say it together. Thank you, Britain!
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 Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
Now, my friends, we will have a short musical break.
5 секунд. Ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
Чтобы
не пропускать фан, да, они могут подписаться.
Ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Interesting. There is, actually is. Well, just as we speak, it's live news. It just came out right now. I mean, I am a little bit surprised. Look, all wars eventually end. No war lasts forever. And personally, I do believe that the war in Ukraine will also end soon. To be completely honest, my friend, both Russia and Ukraine are to a certain extent running on fumes for different reasons. Ukraine is, because Ukraine has not been receiving a decent amount of weapons. Ukraine can't endure this war, if it does not receive those weapons necessary to finally beat back the Russian terrorist regime, that is the main thing that will decide victory or defeat. And Russia is running on fumes for different reasons. You see, sometimes these pro-Russians, they tell us, oh, you know, Russia can never lose a war. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah, sure. It's not like Russia was completely getting destroyed by the Germans at World War II before they started getting land-lease from the Western world. It's not like that happened. But my friends, Russia has other things to worry about. Russia cannot afford to mobilize its full population for the very simple reason that Putin is afraid of an insurrection. You see, this is why Putin has been insisting so much on volunteers and has been so scared of mobilizing the conscripts. If you put a man on the battlefield, a man who's very unhappy to be on the battlefield, and then the war ends and your economy is in shambles and there's no sign of recovery, well, my friend, you just added thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of fighting age men with military experience to your country who are very unhappy, very poor,
Самое
very
популярное сегодня
angry,
слово.
and ready for action. I'm sure every single one of you can see very well why Putin is actually quite scared of some kinds of peace that may come after this war.
Лена, не забудь подписаться.
I am certain that after this war is over, Putin will try his absolute best to keep those soldiers busy and send them to some other war, most likely in Africa, in Niger, Sudan, Burkina Faso, Mali. The Russians have enclaves in every single one of those countries. Used to be Wagner Group enclaves, but now the Wagner Group has been fully appropriated by the Russian military. Now we cannot say that it's just Wagner. Now it is the Russian military. Now, of course, my friends, those conflicts are smaller than the conflict in Ukraine, than the big war in Ukraine that's happening right now. However, we must remember that there are many conflicts, many wars around this world as we speak. And Russia has its hand in a lot of those conflicts. Now, for a better future, my friend, it's important to make sure that Russia does not have the ability to send its troops to other parts of the world to destabilize those parts, same as they destabilized Ukraine, to attack those people, same as they attacked Ukraine. That is one of the reasons why we stand here today, my friends, to make sure that the rest of the world does not have to go through the same terrifying fate Ukraine has had throughout this war. To make sure that doesn't happen, we stand here. We send our message to the rest of the world to wake up and to see what the Russian terrorist regime is, to know your enemy and to know your friends. Because Russia can never be trusted. They have many times proven that they are not a country that can be
Я так понимаю, те,
negotiated,
кто
that can be
защищается,
reasoned with.
тот и разжигает войну.
Cannot
Такая
reason
логика,
with
что
the
ли?
unreasonable. And you cannot reason with Russia. No trade with Russia.
No trade with Russia!
No trade with Russia.
No trade with Russia!
No trade with Russia.
No trade with Russia!
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
Stop Russia, stop the war.
Stop Russia, stop the war!
Stop Russia, stop the war.
Stop Russia, stop the war!
Stop Russia, stop the war.
Stop Russia, stop the war!
That is how all wars should be stopped. by stopping the aggressor. You see, I remember the days when I was in school, and it personally always really angered me how sometimes teachers have this really stupid argument. Oh, you know, he started it and you finished it. What does that even mean? He started it and you finished it. It's like you get punched in the face and you're expected to sit
наверное,
with
клоун
back
сегодня
down
самое
and tell
популярное слово.
teacher, I was just punched in the face. What sense does that make? That never made sense to me. You're punched in the face, you punch back. It's as simple as that. You can't afford to simply allow yourself to be attacked like that. Now, words are different. If you get insulted, you don't necessarily have to reply because it's all in your mind. If you choose to not be insulted, you will not be insulted. But you can't choose to not be hurt. When you are punched in the face, you will always be hurt. You see, my friend, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And what has the Russian terrorist regime been saying for so long? Oh, you know, those Ukrainians are banning the Russian language. They're banning Russian schools. Nonsense. Even now, after so many years of war, there are still many Russian speakers
ОМОН,
in
а
Ukraine.
сколько на
You know
России в
what's
попке,
interesting now?
в попку
A
долбятся?
lot of those Russian speakers who are on the side of Ukraine, they choose to learn Ukrainian now. Why? Well, because they don't want to be speaking the language of the aggressor. I know many such people. Some of those people stand here among us. My friends, Putin has created his own downfall. And we must make sure we help him in that downfall. We must make sure that he falls for certain. Not that he has the opportunity, the breathing space, or the 11th round, as I'm sure he's going to call it one of these days, to repair his broken military, to regroup, and to go for another try. There's still Russian troops in Georgia. There's still Russian troops in Moldova. There's still Russian troops in many places in this world. Why? What are they doing there? What are those Russian troops doing there? Thank you, my friend. Thank you. What are they doing there? Are they keeping the peace? I don't think so. It doesn't seem that way. Seems like everywhere they go, wars start all over again. Why is that? Well, my friend, let's give Sudan as an example. In Sudan, there's been a civil war ongoing. Now there has been some sort of
Лена, Зеленский не убежал в первую неделю и не убежит сейчас.
But in Sudan, it's basically a war, civil war, between their government and the Rapid Support Force, the RSF. Now it's interesting because the RSF used to be a part of the government's military, and yet they rebelled against their government, and they started that civil war. The RSF is supported by Russia, and the Sudanese government gets some support from the free world.
Шамиль.
But the point is, my friend, why is Russia supporting the RSF? Because they get gold from them. They got the gold mines. They got the prime materials. They got real wealth flowing into their pockets. That's why they support them. It's not because they care about your average Sudanese person. The RSF is just pure ambition. They don't have any ideas about fixing their country, about improving the lives of the people. They only think about their personal benefit. That's exactly why Russia finds them useful. It's a quid pro quo between different psychopaths. They help each other to put good people down. That's always what happens when you get these psychopaths in the world. Why do you think that the terrorist regime of Russia, North Korea, and Iran, all of these regimes, they cooperate with each other? Why? Because they are birds of a feather. Even though they don't like each other, they cooperate because no one else wants to deal with such untrustworthy entities. Now, That is something that we need to keep in mind. As we interact with our allies, as we interact with the rest of the world, the most important thing, my friends, in this whole situation is to understand the necessity and the usefulness of organizations, of treaties, defensive treaties, that will help the free world stand together against the Russian terrorist regime and the many other terrorist regimes that threaten it. This war has proven the usefulness of NATO. This war has proven that it is the best deterrent against the Russian terrorist regime and against any of their proxies. That is why, my friends, joining NATO is the best case scenario for Ukraine, now and always. Ukraine in NATO!
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 Ukraine in
NATO! Ukraine in NATO!
Ukraine in NATO!
Ukraine in NATO!
Ukraine in NATO!
Ukraine in NATO!
Ukraine in NATO!
Ukraine in NATO!
Ukraine in NATO!
Ukraine in NATO!
You know, personally, I really enjoy sometimes watching some of these
ОМОН
Russian propaganda videos.
В России
They
ЛГБТ
make fun of the
запрет,
Ukrainians
но
who spread the word.
они никуда не делись, эти люди. И почему народ кто-то бросит, кинет, когда до этого никто не кинул?
Our words truly did not matter, then the Russian propaganda would never speak about them. Why is it that the Russians always complain about sanctions and always demand them to be lifted, although they also at the same time claim that all of those sanctions are ultimately ineffective? It is because they lie. They lie always. The truth is, they are very much hurt. And that is why they want to lift those sanctions. That is why they want to keep us silent. That is why they want to keep the free world unaware of the danger they pose to it, of the hatred they feel against it, of the envy when they look at the free world and the good quality of life of your average person. They become green with envy.
Got some borsty English in there.
Any of these Russian soldiers, so-called patriots, would immediately ditch their Rodina if they had the possibility, the mere hint of a possibility, of living in the free world, in a good country, with good opportunities in life. They would immediately stop what they're doing and flee to the West. But of course, they cannot. So, in a terrible case of buyer's remorse, they choose
Не на фабрике ли
to
случайно?
stay with their terrorist regime. They choose to stay with Russia and to swallow that very bitter pill and to be used as meat, as many others before them and many others after. How sad. Now, my friends, I believe I told you about this very interesting video I watched a while ago. This cartoon, where obviously Russia is represented as this big, friendly, cuddly bear, and Ukraine is represented obviously as a little pig with a bunch of swastikas tattooed on him. Usual Russian propaganda. Now, I could basically tell everything that was going to happen in this video. It was very predictable. However, once again, my friends, there was a single part of this video that was a little bit unique. It did surprise me. It was the fact that at the end of the video, Russia just allowed Ukraine to go into the EU. Now that surprised me. At the beginning of this war, that very idea was taboo for the Russians. Now, it feels like they are having a case of buyer's remorse. oh, Ukraine it wants to join the EU and we can't
Потому
really
что
beat them
клоуны
in
в
the
комментариях.
battlefield. Well, you know, we never wanted them in the first place. You know, it's like that toxic boyfriend or girlfriend who you date with, and then you break up, and they tell you, oh, you know, I never wanted you in the first place. You were horrible, always. I never liked you. Well, why did you guys date then? Did you spend so much time together? I mean, it's quite obvious.
А помнишь, Лена, как президент Украины назвал твоего
To
президента?
have Ukraine as part
Не
of
раз.
it again. But it cannot. And it will not. Now, things have changed, my friends. And now, we must ensure that they do not return to what they were before. Ever. Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава!
Slava нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
Now, my friends, exactly. We're going to have another little musical break.
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава!
Pavlo just asked to substitute him for a couple of minutes. I'm just back from the Houses of Parliament, where our good friend Thomas Brayford organized quite an impressive conference, and there were parliamentarians there, there were people from the Ukrainian embassy, there were members of the House of Lords, of different think tanks, and the talk was about disinformation, you know, how this war, yes, it is the hot war for Ukrainians in the front lines, but it is also, you know, Russian regime is pumping millions, hundreds of millions, maybe billions into the whole disinformation campaign, reducing, you know, trying to reduce the resistance of the Ukrainian society, at the same time trying to discourage the European nations of helping Ukraine. And of course, you know, they have been successful with quite a few efforts within the United States, where the narratives
Когда Путин говорит «Слава России», что тебе напоминает?
not just ultra-left or hard-left, but also the hard-right, you know, the white supremacists who are just parroting something from Putin's book. So, you know, during this conference, I'm sure Thomas will talk when he's here on Friday. One of the speakers, and I'm sure many of you know him, is Pekka from the Vatniksu, the Finnish journalist who decided to use his expertise in fighting the disinformation. And he launched, he's written a book, but much more popular is his YouTube channel. And in that YouTube channel, he analyzes the Russian disinformation campaigns bit by bit. He deconstructs them and then just shows
Чекаємо, побачимо, що трапиться.
absurd they are. So if you're not yet following him on YouTube, it's
Героям слава,
also big on the other social networks. And basically he talked about how one of the ways we, the Westerners, the Europeans, must learn from Ukrainians, how Ukrainians are you know, doing their campaigns of fighting against this disinformation. And one of the best ways is actually by giving the voice to the people who actually experience firsthand the occupation of Russia, and who cannot be fooled because what they tell, the stories they tell of their suffering, of the loss of their loved ones, of the injuries, of the
Россию делим.
you know, the loss of their of habitats, of the what
Шамиль,
Russians have been doing
Магомедов.
to the whole areas. To
Салам
the
алейкум.
to anything.
Ты чё продал свою
These
родину?
kind of stories cut through all the propaganda. Of course, you know, the propaganda machine by the Kremlin is
Стал рабом,
huge,
Шамиль,
is
вместо
millions
того,
being
чтоб свою
pumped
страну
into it. There are a
независимо
lot of
держать.
people who are repeating that propaganda. Some of them are paid in the Western societies. Some of them, you know, are cynical and don't believe it, but yet they just repeat it because money has been paid and they are working for it. Maybe Russia has some compromise on them. There are some as well who are believing that stuff because, you know, the typical sort of way how propaganda works, it offers easy, simple answers to complex problems, and that's what
Arizona,
Russia is
I'll
trying
see
to
how that
cover
goes for you.
for quite a while in the Western countries. There is also another thing which was touched upon in that conference. One of a famous British journalist who was there from the Guardian, Carol Cadwell, I can't pronounce her surname. It's a quite complicated Welsh surname, but she's the one who has devoted years and years in the Guardian to do the investigations on Cambridge Analytica, on the influence of the dirty Russian money in the US elections and also in Brexit. So one of the things she was telling is that there are really millions, dozens of millions of money swimming here in London, which are coming, or we're coming from Moscow, from
Трампа терпеть 4 года придется.
trying to almost buy a subclass of people who are ready to serve it. So lawyers, bankers, PR people, journalists, they for years have been receiving that money. Right now, maybe not, they are trying to cut it, but it has been you know, way before the 2016, and she thought that 2016 will be the waking up moment for the British
Okay,
media, for the
anyone who
British
understands
political
English
class.
well,
But it has
send
not
a plus
happened.
to the chat.
Russia is still, you know,
I just want to
launching
see how
its
many we
narrative,
have.
Still finding its propaganda, finding its way into the society. And
Убивали
one
на
of the
Донбассе
best
вы
ways to resist
людей, и
is
сейчас
really
убиваете.
to trust the sources of the journalists you trust, or trust, small local media which is reporting the facts on the ground, which cannot be fooled. Some other topics were touched, but I'm sure
Муссолини, Гитлер,
it's gonna be
Чаушеску, они тоже думали, что их страна самая великая.
quite an interesting
Как
tale
они
of
закончили?
how
Это
Ukrainian
где? Это Лондон-Сити.
society is resisting that. One of the panel speakers was Ukrainian journalist Olga Tokaru, and she said that while
Александр, а ты на
Russian
фабрике
propaganda is
ботов
like
тоже за еду
a
работаешь?
gigantic, well-oiled,
Картофельные очистки.
well-funded, multi-million sort of bulldozer,
Hello.
Ukrainians function like a beehive. A lot of bees trying to defend their beehive, and a lot of sort of initiatives which were
Ангел, ты думаешь, если вы нанесете удар ядерный, то по вам никто не нанесет? Вряд ли. Прикол, приезжай, и мы посмотрим, какой ты шустрый здесь, на месте. Слава России. Ну, по-моему, это как-то пахнет, да? Тем, что вы писали выше.
So a lot of this countering of Russian propaganda by Ukrainians is happening just by, ingenuity, by young generation who's smart, who's quick on its feet, and who can respond much quicker to whatever narratives Russians are creating. And there are
Покиньте чат, пожалуйста. Больше не появляйтесь здесь.
Это вопрос комментатору выше.
Логично. Це цікаво. Дуже дякую.
Spoken about by Pekka and by a Danish journalist called Morten. It's a Johnny play, Russians wrote so many about why that plane crashed. First it was all the birds to blame, and then something else, because they did not get, the metodichka, the sort of instructions from the Kremlin, what exactly should be.
Да, это ты выше написал, спросил, что за чувак.
Of stuff, but that's not a new thing. When
пора учить английский. Англосаксы придут, порядок наведут.
The Skripal family in Salisbury, Russia immediately launched around 15 to 20 different narratives of what exactly was
Имейте мужество покинуть чужие территории.
The society here or the Western audience, what could have been happening. So this is not a new thing of launching just checking which of them will stick, and then of course for the proper Western society, the proper media has to deconstruct this false narrative. So just to wrap up and to invite Pavlo back to talk, I just want to say, we actually can do something to fight this disinformation. We are
Это страшный сон твой.
We can convince other people that look what you are reading
Те люди, против кого вы боретесь,
from a very dubious
не
source.
боитесь.
Here's the couple of facts from the big organizations you can trust, or some NGOs, or big trusted media organizations, or some podcasters, anyone whom you trust. So don't just swallow whatever Russian propaganda is throwing at you. To have a little bit more thought. And one of the good examples how that could be countered is the example of Finland. In Finland, trust in the state broadcaster is over 80%. So people really trust their local media, and they know that whatever Russia is throwing at them, or some sort of stories which are appearing in a dubious sources, they have a way to verify it, and if it's not appearing in the public broadcaster or some respected newspapers in Finland, the Finnish society says, like, it's most likely just another Russian hoax. So there are ways to educate yourself, and of course for the societies in the West to educate society of how to distinguish, the real piece of information from some cheap Russian hoax. That's about it. Слава Украине!
Героям слава!
Russia lies! Russia lies! Russia lies all the time!
Russia lies! Russia lies! Russia lies all the time!
Russia lies! Russia lies! Russia lies all the time!
Russia lies! Russia lies! Russia lies all the time!
Russia lies! Russia lies! Russia lies all the time!
Russia lies! Russia lies! Russia lies all the time!
Russia lies! Russia lies! Russia lies all the time!
Russia lies! Russia lies! Russia lies all the time!
Russia lies! Russia lies! Russia lies all the time!
Russia lies! Russia lies! Russia lies all the time!
One thing that Russia has been lying about is about sanctions. They keep on maintaining that sanctions do not impact them, that they have import replacement program, which is working just fine. But if that's the case, then why they have such a huge inflation? Why vegetables go up by 50%?
Прикол, покинь канал и больше сюда не заходи.
All the elderly people are still in butter out in the supermarkets because
Сан
it's so
Саныч, мы
expensive for them to buy.
ваш страх.
Why? Because sanctions do work. Sanctions do work. And our message to
Андрей, а ты что не в окопе?
the whole world, all these almost 3 years has been more sanctions on Russia!
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 More sanctions
Марк,
on Russia!
ты продажная
Sanctions on
шкура.
Russia!
More sanctions on
Продал
Russia!
родину с
More sanctions
потрохами.
on Russia!
More sanctions on Russia!
Because Russia is a terrorist state!
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
Russia is a terrorist state!
Russia is a terrorist state!
Путин напал на Украину уже более 1000 дней. Ты заметил это?
Why? No trade with Russia!
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 Обычные русские, они за войну.
No trade with Russia!
No trade with Russia!
No trade with Russia!
Stop buying Russian gas!
Stop buying Russian gas!
Stop buying Russian oil!
Stop buying Russian oil!
Stop buying Russian gas!
Stop buying Russian gas!
Димон, ты это писал 3 года назад.
Russian oil!
Stop buying Russian oil!
Stop buying Russian gas!
Stop buying Russian gas!
Stop buying
Александр,
Russian
то, что ты
oil!
русский, ты будешь платить до конца своей жизни.
Stop buying Russian gas and stop buying Russian oil. Those are two
Дон-дон,
major
всё так и
items,
есть.
major income items for Russia. That's how Russia is able to maintain its economy. So that's
Ты ж, Андрей,
how
нас услышал.
Russia can finance their war in Ukraine. Every
Героям
single liter
слава.
of gas which is produced using Russian oil means a dozen of bullets or FPV or artillery shell flying towards Ukraine. It means another rocket hitting Ukrainian civilian targets. It's another Shahed which hits Ukrainian critical infrastructure. That's why we need people to stop and think about it. And especially politicians and people with business interests. Yes, if you look at it, if you look at the statistics says that Russian income from oil has been the highest since 2018.
А ты
That's
своих
correct.
не считаешь,
It
Саша?
has gone up since pre-war time. Since pre-war time. Of course, it's more expensive for Russia to sell. It's more expensive for Russia to sell the
Эксперт
oil
должен
because
понимать,
it needs to
что
get
происходит, он же эксперт.
sanctions, but
Тем более
they
диванный.
were able to do so. But the things are not so bleak. Recently, U.S. has implemented sanctions on
Я
Russian
видел нашивку одного
dark
диванного
fleet,
войска.
fleet of
obsolete tankers which are used to transport Russian oil into the black market. Well, there are two things about using those tankers
сожалению,
to
чат оперирует
transport
на
to contraband
10
Russian
IQ.
oil. First, it actually finances Russian terrorist activities in Ukraine. But second, and that's Ukrainian problem, well, not to mention European. But second, those old tankers in many cases are not exactly seaworthy, which means, as we saw
Justin,
near
are right.
a week ago near Crimea, it's
Let's
a
start with the
risk
Russian
of
government.
ecological disaster. It's a risk of ecological disaster for any country which those tankers are passing by. The West has learned
What sort of
that
scam war are you talking
sanctions
about?
is
People are
one
actually
thing.
dying there. Come on.
But then, second thing, main thing, is to enforce those functions. And then implement
Bulgaria.
secondary functions to cut
Bulgaria
the
was
ways of going around the sanctions which were implemented in the first place. And that's what the world is doing right now. If Russia has employed about 185 oil tankers as their shadow fleet to bypass sanctions. After
Похороны
US
Курской области.
has introduced sanctions on those 185 ships, 65 of them filled with oil are stuck. 5 of them are stuck near China shore, and the rest is stuck near Russia's shore. That's how sanctions work. Of course,
This is
they will
Texas.
find ways around it. However,
Texas, да.
to find ways around it will take time. It will take some time for them to start moving again, and it will get more expensive to get around those sanctions. Therefore, the interesting piece about it, that one of the consumers of Russian oil is Europe. Yes, Europe is still consuming Russian oil, although major consumers now are China, China and India, with secondary sanctions that might change, and China is trying to diversify supplies into the Middle East, but Europe is still buying Russian oil. Stop buying Russian oil!
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 Stop buying Russian oil.
Stop buying Russian oil!
Stop buying Russian oil.
Stop buying Russian oil!
Stop buying Russian oil.
Because for every gallon of oil
Так а почему
sold,
Минские соглашения появились? Зачем вы вошли на Донбасс?
Thank you very
Минских бы
much.
не было, если бы
It's
вы
paid for
не зашли
with blood of
в Украину с оружием.
Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian civilians, Ukrainian children. Now, second major source of income
Россия
is
впереди.
gas.
Стоп.
Gas is a little bit more difficult than oil because while you can use an old tanker to ship oil, for gas you either need the pipe, which goes. One of them is going through Ukraine. 2 of them were blown up in Nord Stream, or you need to liquefy the gas and have a very sophisticated
Саша,
infrastructure
так
and
все-таки
special
ты
ships to
сочувствуешь
transport it.
англосаксам, да?
Russian sale of gas has
Это в
gone
Лондоне.
down. Europe has gone down in terms has gone and diversified their source of their gas. Nonetheless, Europe is still buying Russian gas. Countries like France, countries like Spain, they're still buying Russian gas. We all hear that Slovakia and Hungary are dependent on Russian gas, but guess what? France and Spain as well. Now, right now,
40% не
after
наберет.
this year, when the contract with
Ботня
Gazprom
забьет.
expired, Ukraine stopped transporting Russian gas through Ukrainian pipeline. Finally, that happened. That cut down Russian gas sales by about 60 million by about 50%.
Курс серебряников
Alternative.
один
Well, you will think that, okay,
биткоин.
well, we're not transporting gas through Ukraine. We can transport it via other pipelines. One of them goes to China, but two of them are going to Turkey.
По какому
Let's
поводу?
remind you that two North
Делим Курскую
Streams
область.
were blown up at the beginning of the war, and two Turkish pipelines are still operational. Turkish pipelines are transporting about 32 billion cubic meters, which half of it is consumed by Turkey, and half of it via Turkey reaches Europe. And again, Europe is buying Russian gas. Stop buying Russian gas!
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 And now to the sanctions, right? The thing about pipeline, it has a finite capacity, and Turkish pipeline both are functioning at capacity. The one which goes to China is functioning at capacity, and China refused to build the second stream 3 times over the last 3 years. Therefore, the gas which is not going through Ukraine they will not be able to put in any other pipeline, which means the revenue is lost. However, there is a way around it, and the way around it is liquefied gas. You can liquefy the gas and transport it that way. The good news is that Europe is considering banning use of Russian liquefied gas. That's right, banning usage of Russian liquefied gas, and that will depend on countries like France and Spain, and there is definitely will is there. Especially if you think about it, that replacement liquefied gas altogether from the States, which means more business with the United States, which means will make Trump happy, which means they will have improved relationships. So it's in everyone's best interest to ban Russian liquefied gas from Europe. Stop buying Russian gas!
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 Stop buying Russian oil!
Stop buying Russian oil!
Stop buying Russian gas!
Stop buying Russian gas!
Stop buying Russian oil!
Stop buying Russian oil!
And in general,
Алкор, вы выбирали этого президента, вам и отвечать.
No trade with Russia!
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 No trade with Russia! Thank you.
No trade with Russia!
As you see, sanctions to war. Sale of Russian gas has gone down 4-fold since the beginning of the war, and it will go down further. The less money Russia gets from gas sales, the less money it has to spend on weaponry, on buying North Korean soldiers, on using contraband to import Western equipment to build sophisticated weaponry. That's right. If someone takes a look at Russia's Iskander or any other missile, at anything sophisticated, anything more sophisticated than a stick, it has Western components in it, because Russia cannot produce it. Russia does not have know-how. Russia used to be the second largest army in the world, now is the second best army in Ukraine, which means it cannot compete with major powers. It's interesting that Pavlo mentioned about the state of Russian nukes, whether they are fit to fly. Well, if you think about it,
А на подвал в Луганске кто гражданских гонял?
Nukes that they tried to test launch has exploded at the launch site, destroying
Да, мы в Лондоне, приходи.
infrastructure around it. If you think about what Russia bragged about, they bragged about their military power. They bragged
Только сегодня
about
ты уже не успеешь.
how many
10 минут
artillery
осталось.
they have, how many planes they have.
Приходи в
So
пятницу,
just look at
Даунинг
the
Стрит,
state of Russia's, at which
6
state
вечера.
Russia has. Russia is forced to use tanks which were made in 1950s. There might be an example
Марк Давиденко,
where Russia will send to
ты
Ukraine
продажная
tanks
шкура,
which were made for the
и
World War II.
ты должен знать, что если бы русские,
Some tanks which were
которых ты
made-
поддерживал, не
which were
пришли
made in 60s,
в Луганск,
even though
не
they
захватили
cannot repair
город,
because know-how is not there,
то
and major
ничего бы
components
этого
were
не было.
coming from Ukraine.
Так что гуляй, Вася.
Absolutely new tanks and high, the most sophisticated, highly technological tanks. They had only few hundred, and most of them already gone. They're already gone. They storage places are 70% depleted, and whatever is left there is not fit to drive.
Вася, а чё в
It
Приднестровье не
has
продаете
already
газ?
either been cannibalized for parts to fix the things
своих
which
там
should
бросили?
move, or the remainder will require some major fixes, and they do not always have spare parts. Therefore, if I
Еще
draw
один Вася,
the
Вася Иванов.
parallel, I
Тошнит.
suspect that they
Гуляй
use
тогда,
their
иди на другое
forces
место.
kind of bad the same
зарплате
state.
сам
They
сидит.
might have 10, 20, 30% of
Дуже
them
дякую, Світлана.
in good
Приходьте
condition,
ще раз.
and the rest is just there for show. Yes, even the 30% of Russian nuclear arsenal is enough to destroy the world, and Russia has been laughing about it for years. But with each passing day, even West realizes more and more that that's nothing more but a laugh by a terrorist state. Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
No trade with Russia.
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 Stop buying Russian gas.
Stop buying Russian gas.
Stop buying Russian oil.
Stop buying Russian oil.
Stop buying Russian gas.
Stop buying Russian gas.
Stop buying Russian oil.
Stop buying Russian oil.
And just a note, thing that I just thought of, and I don't
Little
think
Ukraine
people
very
talk
much
about
is capable to
After
defeat Russia.
Russia collapses onto itself and is split in underlying components as independent states. Russia will have no gas. Russia will have no oil. Russia will have no metal. And that's bound to
Саша
happen.
Науменко,
Stop buying
папа
Russian
украинец
gas.
или
Stop
отец?
buying Russian gas. Stop
Или дед?
buying Russian oil.
Stop
Продажный
buying
ты.
Russian oil.
Well, we still have. One thing that I just mentioned is metal. And it's interesting that Europe is considering banning aluminum from Russia. Yes, there are sanctions on Russian aluminum. They cannot buy anything made of aluminum from Russia. However, they were
Илья,
still
еще
able
раз
to buy
повторяю,
Russian
что
aluminum.
Вы
As a raw
стерли
material. Now
пух и
they're
прах
considering banning
около
that.
20 городов на
And that will
Донбассе.
hit
Сколько Украина
extremely
стерла
major businesses.
городов на Донбассе?
One of them
Пока
is
вас там не
business
было,
of
ничего не
oligarch
происходило.
Deripaska. And he has been in trouble with other businesses already. His metal pipe business is down the drain because there is
Сколько убили
sanctions
гражданских
on
вы за
Russian
1000
pipe,
дней,
which
не
cannot be solved.
сосчитать
He already
просто.
came to Putin asking for the Russian government state to buy out excess pipes that he produced that he couldn't sell. Now guess what?
Костя,
Money
почему у тебя
producing
украинская
aluminum
фамилия?
is
Ты
going
продал
down the
родину?
drain as well. I'm sure he will not go bankrupt, but I'm sure he'll lose a lot on that. And Russia will lose a lot of income in form of taxes from sale
of the
Алкор, все знают.
Stop
кого выбирал.
trading with Russia.
Stop trading with Russia.
No trade 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 with Russia.
Trading with Russia, meaning selling Ukrainian blood, selling Ukrainian lives, selling Ukrainian children. No trade with Russia.
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 No trade
with Russia.
No trade with Russia.
Давыденко, продажная шкура. Да, это вы пришли на Донбасс и начали убивать людей с 2014 года. Вас никто сюда не звал. На мой Донбасс тебя, Давыденко, никто не звал. И вы начали убивать людей. И до сих пор убиваете. И разрушаете дома.
I'm happy to say that Ukrainian military are imposing their own sanctions on Russia.
Ты, Марк, первая продажная шкура в этой всей цепочке. Ты звал на Донбасс русских.
Зачем лучше сейчас Крыму? Ты лишил всех жизни. Оккупант, блин.
Which not only reduces Russian income from sale of such products, it directly reduces Russian military capability. Therefore, we're all working towards common goal, towards the victory on Ukraine. And sanctions do work. Sanctions do work if properly implemented, enforced, and secondary sanctions are implemented on the ways to bypass the original sanctions. World support Ukraine!
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 No trade with Russia!
No trade with Russia.
Thank you very much. One, two, hello. Thank you very much, Alexander. Thank you guys for helping out a little bit. I feel like,
Світлана, дуже дякую.
now, but it's very important to make a few other announcements, my friends.
Чекаю вас і
Thank
в
you all for
наступному
coming
разі.
here. Our rallies, as you know, happen here on Wednesdays at 6, Fridays at 6, and Sundays at 3. And this Sunday, we're going to have a special event. We're going to come here at 3 as usual. We're going to stay here until 4. And then at 4, we're going to make our way this way and to the other side of the bridge with our flags. We're going to have this little march. So please join us on this Sunday. Let your friends know so that we get more people on this Sunday. Друзі, цей неділі будемо мати особливий івент.
Володя, куда ваши деньги уходят? Ты свои считал деньги? 10 миллионов рублей, миллиардов уходит.
Після четвертій ми почнемо йти в той бік, на інший бік моста, на інший бік річки. Це буде наш невеликий марш. Що? Та я кажу, міст перейдемо. Ну ладно, станемо на мості, перейдемо міст. Коротше, марш невеликий зробимо до моста, правильно? Станемо на мості в кінці. Так що кажіть друзям, кажіть сім'ї, кажіть всім, кого знаєте, щоб приходили, всі будемо стояти там на мості з прапорами, щоб бачили по всьому Лондоні. Там буде нас добре видно. Right, my friends. Before we end today's rally,
В Крыму уже нет никакого флота и не будет,
we
я
get
так думаю.
news of people's birthdays, and I'd like to congratulate with the birthday of our friend Andy here. His birthday was yesterday, and he's a regular in our rallies. So please don't expect me to sing happy birthday, but if you guys like, you can sing a little bit of a happy birthday for Andy, our friend here, a regular, and also a very good dancer. It's also very important to show the Ukrainian culture to the people of the world through the art, through drawing, through singing, through dancing. That's right. And we got our protestant community over here, best of luck to all of them. You know, they're showing the Ukrainian culture in their own way, the dancing way. You know, many people, they think that this, I'm doing it badly, but you know what I mean, that this is a Russian dance. Many people think, oh, it's the Rasputin dance. No, wrong.
Идите
It's not the
с нашей
Rasputin
территории,
dance.
и мы
It's the
закончим свои
Ukrainian dance, man. It's called
митинги.
hopak. It's time to stop. It's time to stop calling it a Russian dance. Alright guys, I apologize. Don't worry, I'm just, I think this is an important topic. You know, to make sure people
Константин,
know
а ты уже поехал на
Hopak is
фронт? Что
Ukrainian.
такие
The
пишешь?
Cossacks are Ukrainian.
Пожелания.
And you know what? Tchaikovsky was a Ukrainian too. How about that? His name was Chaika, a name of a Cossack. He changed it to Tchaikovsky to sound more Russian. Do people know about that? Of course not. Many people even think Sikorsky, the guy who invented the helicopter, was Russian. Because he spent a lot of time in Russia. He was Ukrainian. And he fled the Soviet Union, went to the US, and invented the helicopter
Потому
there.
что в Англии говорят на английском.
So what point is there in living in the Soviet Union or in modern day Russia? All the people who want a better future should leave Russia, should leave it behind. Or even better, rebel against the current government and overthrow it. But perhaps for some people that's asking too much, alas.
Make Russia small again.
Exactly, make Russia small again. That's very good, thank you very much. You know, very important saying nowadays. They get very triggered about that one. They get very angry. You know, Russian history, proper Russian history, in terms of its separation from the Kievan Rus, happened with the Tsardom of Moscow. That was the beginning of Russia. The Kievan Rus, that was the beginning of Ukraine. That's not something they're going to tell you. Where was Moscow when the Kievan Rus was at its height of power? Moscow didn't exist. It was a swamp. You know, and then a village, and then yes, it became a city. But anyway, my friends, once again, important to let people know through our art. Once again, happy birthday to Andy. I kind of deviated a little bit after the getting all upset about the Hopak and all that. You know? But these guys, you know, these guys are doing God's work. They're doing a good job here. They're doing a very good job. Well done to them. And once again, thank you all very much for coming here. And now, as usual, we're going to end this rally as we always do with the Ukrainian anthem.
Ні слава, ні воля, ще нам, українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття. За нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
Дякую.